this time of the year when the southern mountains of Appalachia have just kind of had their rebirth, and everywhere you look is green. All the trees have put on their new summer garments, all these different shades of green too. If you've ever been to the mountains of Appalachia, it's really amazing how just everything comes alive. In the months, the late May and the early June especially, is when you really notice it. A lot of times I'll be driving somewhere this time of the year, and the same place I drove, a month ago through Brasstown or whatever, but all that green just kind of reaches out at you, and it's just suddenly like, oh, there's a mountain, hello. It's like they're hanging up against the roads as you drive, and even looking out in your window or even in our backyard, it's really just an amazing thing. But all that green, all that rebirth makes me think of this wonderful old song, The Little Green Valley. We just call it Little Green Valley. I grew up hearing Pap and Paul sing it, Pap probably to begin with, and then Paul, and he's going to tell us a little bit. I roped him into this song, kind of looking back at a song so that he could tell more details about it. It was written by Carson Robison in 1928, and he was from Kansas. He was a cowboy kind of country music singer and songwriter, but he was also a farmer, a cowpuncher, and an oil field worker. And his kind of claim to fame in those early days was he was able to whistle in two-part harmony. I would love to find a recording of that and be able to hear that. And he was nicknamed the Kansas Jaybird. That was his nickname. In Appalachia, and I'm not sure in Kansas, it was probably the same in those days. Jaybird, we kind of would use that as a term. I would call Corey and Katie Jaybirds, especially Katie, kind of somebody that goes around, is really, really outgoing, but kind of has a real thread of comedy through their whole life. Everything they do is kind of funny. So that's how we would use that phrase. So that makes me think that maybe he was like that too. But in 1924, he made his first recording with Victor Records, and it was Songbirds in Georgia and Whistling the Blues Away. We should look for that one. I've never heard it. In later years, he traveled with his band, playing even for King George and Queen Elizabeth. And then in 1971, he was inducted into the Nashville Songwriters Hall of Fame. And here's a quote from then, or from that time when he was inducted, but a quote from him. Nature and tradition have been my best sources for material. I've learned plenty of things from her, and I reckon most people could write songs about the odd characters, odd happenings right in their own backyard. I'm not aiming to hand out any advice on how to write songs. I don't think there's a set formula for the work. My heritage and tradition has come down to me from the covered wagon days, and I suppose there couldn't have been a better background for my efforts. I just hope they keep that tradition alive long after I'm gone, and I hope my son carries on after me. So that's a really nice quote from him, and I think he would be glad that here we are today in 2022 talking about one of his great songs. But I'm going to let Paul tell you kind of about how it come to be that Pap even wanted to do the song.
Okay. So when I was little, long before I could play guitar myself, Pap would sit around, as you know, just in the living room on the couch, and just, when he had time on the weekends and the evenings, he'd just take out his guitar and just sit over there and go to singing. He usually didn't pick things out. He would just sing and chord the guitar. And he knew a lot of songs, and so every now and then he would sing a song that you'd never heard before. And sometimes that would be because he wrote it, and then other times not. So I can remember he sang this song, and I immediately liked it and wanted to know, hey, where did that song come from? And he said he had learned it from our Uncle Henry, really our great Uncle Henry, so Mom's uncle, Henry Truitt. And I really liked it, and so then when he would take the guitar out, and again, this is before I could play, I would ask him to sing that song. And he knew just a verse and what I would call the bridge. This is one of those unusual songs that has verses and a chorus, and then it has this third part, which most songs just have a verse and a chorus. He knew the first verse and the chorus and the bridge, and that was it. And he would sing those parts. And then when I started to play the guitar, everybody, us, of course, me, you, Steve, and then all of our cousins, we all had an interest in Pap and Ray's music. They sang gospel music, the Wilson brothers. But I maybe had more interest than my siblings or than my cousins, because then once I learned to play, I started actually playing with them. And sometimes it wasn't always a good thing, but because of that, I sometimes had some influence on their music or the songs that they would choose to sing. So I liked this song so much that they wound up singing it, which was kind of unusual because it's not a gospel song.
Yeah.
And they didn't sing songs that weren't gospel songs. And they even wound up recording it, I believe, on the Little White Church album. And then there's a live CD that I kind of produced about, oh gosh, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, called Live and on the Radio or something like that. And it has a live version of it that they did in Kentucky. And all this was before the internet, really. So it's just that first verse and bridge, and some of the words are not correct, at least not in the way that Robison there wrote it. And of course, we didn't even know who wrote it. You couldn't, It wasn't as easy to find things out back then. But I always liked the song from the first time I heard it, because to me it just sounded kind of like a happy song, kind of bouncing, and it talks about sunlight streaming and all that. And you know, we don't think of ourselves living in a valley. We say holler more.
Yeah.
But I could identify with that part of the song.
Yeah.
And never really left that much. I stayed gone, you know, for college for a little while. But I could definitely see that if I left, I would want to get back.
Come home, yeah.
And I'll mention this, that Pap and I, we sang one time on I think it was WJUL 770 AM or something. And David Brose, who was at the folk school for many years, he was the DJ, or it was his show. And I don't think we were singing this song, but we sang some song about home. And he said a friend of his said that there are like three major themes of most country songs, and one is you're at home and you want to get away. You have that wanderlust, like the in the Merle Haggard song, First Thing I Remember Knowing Was a Lonesome Whistle Blowing.
Right, yeah.
And a youngin's dream of growing up to ride. You know, you want to get out there and see the world.
Yeah.
Or you have the opposite of that, which is you've been gone and now you want to get back, like 500 miles from home with what's his name? I'm drawing a blank.
Mac Wiseman.
Bobby Bear. Bobby Bear.
Mac Wiseman, I think he sung it too.
Mac sang everything.
Yeah.
Mac sang this song we're talking about, I'm pretty sure, but I didn't hear that for a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I thought that was interesting. David said that his friend had made that astute observation, as he said, and I can't remember the third thing.
And that is, especially the homesickness part, that kind of really plays into country music is loved by everyone all over the world, especially all over the United States. But for people born and raised in Appalachia, kind of this intense sense of place that we have, you really identify with those songs. Like Paul said, even though you may not have lived 40 years in a different, across the country or whatever, you still have that kind of longing for home, sense of home really plays through our culture anyway.
I think that's why the song Detroit City was so popular.
Yeah.
And, of course, that was Mel Tillis wrote that. And that was Bobby Bear also. So that's funny.
Yeah.
And then we're talking about Uncle Henry, great-uncle Henry. Well, a big portion of Mom's side of the family, that's where they went.
Yeah.
They went to Detroit and worked in the auto industry. And there was a brother duet. I'll get back to this song, I promise. There was a brother duet, the York Brothers, that were really popular. And they performed mostly in Detroit. And I've read that that's why they were so popular. It was bringing that taste and that feeling of Appalachia there to all those lonesome hillbillies up there, in the car
people
industry.
that had left. What would you call them? Like strangers in a different city.
Sure.
But like Mom's family, Granny's family, like Paul said, they stayed. They didn't come home, so that became their home.
Most of them.
Most of them didn't come. Yeah, Uncle James come back, but most of them stayed.
Anyway, back to this song. Like I say, I always liked it because of that. And I think I thought about trying to find it. I even drew a little picture like of a little cabin down in a valley, you would be coming back, and there's the smoke rolling out of the chimney. Yeah. And, lamplight and time, same idea.
Chimney.
Yeah, the little little whitewashed chimney. It's the same idea, in those songs.
Yeah.
And another reason I like the song is it sounded different, because I think you said this a little while ago, before we started the camera, that it's not really an Appalachian song exactly. And then way back when you blogged about it on the Blind Pig blog, and you found out it was this country singer, that made perfect sense, because it does really have more of that
sort
of a Gene Autry flavor to it. but I always really liked it. And then after I had only heard Pap sing it, and it was only that part of, like I'd say 50% of the song. And then one year when I was in my late teens, I guess, I found a cassette tape at Walmart, and it was Marty Robbins, and it was all cowboy songs, and it was on there. And so then I knew a second verse and a second chorus. And so if you watch the video of me and Pap singing it, you'll see he pulls out a piece of paper, because all those years he and Ray and he himself only knew the first verse and the bridge and the first chorus. So when we get to that point in the song, that's the part I'd learned from Marty Robbins, and he needs that piece of paper, because he hasn't heard that portion. So after that, sometime well after I'd heard Marty Robbins sing it, then I did start to hear a few other people sing it. There was a great YouTube channel in the early days of YouTube that was immensely popular. It was called The Fret Killer. And great guitar player, great singer, and you could not see his face. You could only see kind of his torso and his guitar. And he just did all kinds of songs. Well, Fret Killer did it, and Pap and I liked Fret Killer's version. Of course, we kind of already knew our own version by that point. That turned out to be Jim Hurst, who was in Clara Lynch's band, and he played with Misty Raines. He played at Stokoe Valley, where we've played. Great guitarist and singer. He took that channel down for some reason, but you can still find some of his videos that other people have uploaded, Fret Killer. Corey, a while back, she, at a yard sale or somewhere, she found this original record, Marty Robbins record, and it has the Little Green Valley on it. I thought this was really cool for a number of reasons. One, there's another YouTube channel that I like and you should check out. It's called String Surfing. And I don't know the gentleman's name, but he has just a great vocal. Anyway, in almost all his videos, you can see this LP up on the wall behind him, because he's a huge Marty Robbins fan. So the cassette I had didn't look like this, but it's really the same collection of music. And I was reading about Jim Glazer, some things he had said, and watching some videos with him, and he talked about this was kind of Marty's first foray into cowboy music, and that he really had to convince his record label that that was a viable thing.
Oh, wow.
Because he hadn't done that at that point. He'd had songs like White Sport Coat and songs like that. And that was a bit of a gamble, but it really paid off. And then he really became more known for that. From
definitely.
there on through the 1980s, he was kind of known for as a cowboy singer. Also because of the amazing cowboy songs he wrote, like El Paso and things. And Jim Glazer is singing the harmony on that very first cowboy collection of songs there. But anyway, that's a little bit how I knew about the song. And it wasn't until much later that I knew it came from Carson Robison. And probably when I credited him, I'll have to go back and look, but on that live CD, I won't be surprised if I go back and I probably called him Carson Robinson, because we know a lot of Robinsons around here, and Robertsons and Robertsons.
Yeah, so it's almost impossible for me to even say Carson's name, because I want to say Robertson or Robinson.
I've never known a Robison. And, you're talking about Appalachia. A lot of names, when they were brought over from Europe, got changed slightly, and sometimes it's to make them easier to pronounce. So that might be a situation like that. I think it's definitely easier to say Robinson than Robison.
Yeah, it is for me.
Like around here, there's Gustav's sons, and there's Gustav's sons, and that was probably originally once the same name,
probably.
And it just got
changed,
manipulated around. I could go on and on probably about that song. It's such a cool song. I love how it goes around the horn. It goes around the horn the same way. When I say goes around the horn, that would mean like if you're in the position of C, then you're going to D. Or if you're in the position of D, then you're going to E. You're going 2 frets higher than the main chord that you're in. And it does that on that bridge. And it just, to me, it has that happy little song, or happy little sound to it.
And it does fit perfectly for this time of the year when it's so beautiful outside.
All that greenery, like you say. And I'll throw this in here. In our area, the state's really bad not to mow along the sides of the roads.
Yeah.
So you're talking about it closing
but they are
in.
now. Yeah.
It really, you do kind of feel closed in by all the greenery. Yeah. And you were talking earlier that it's somehow it's kind of different than full on summer. Spring, things are just kind of more tender. They're budding out.
The green's brighter, more vibrant. All those different greens. There's so many. As summer comes on, especially July, about July, it just gets so wild. It's like more like a jungle then.
A little too much.
Instead of a little green valley.
The humidity ramps up.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, Carson, I guess spring in Kansas also would have been really
probably
beautiful, pleasant place and pleasant time. Too, if you think about people like Carson Robison or Elton Britt, who was the originator of the song Pap and I sang about there's a Star-Spangled Banner waving somewhere. There was just a whole host of those guys, and they're mostly forgotten now. And when you go back and you look at that, you really see how once upon a time country music was so diverse, because you had cowboy singers, you had bluegrass singers, you had more like Dixieland, you had barbershop quartets, and over time, unfortunately, it got less and less diverse. And I saw on that Roots of Country documentary, I believe that was on there, they talked about how it was originally called Country and Western. Country and Western. And that was coined by people in New York that owned the record companies, and they were figuring out how to market it, so they could even see that you kind of had two genres within a genre. And then, of course, at some point they stopped saying country and western and just started saying country, because that part kind of went away, really died down. The bluegrass kind of went away, which is kind of sad. But you can see Marty Robbins had that diversity, because he would sing more strict country songs, but then he would sing western cowboy songs. I even have a video of him singing Hawaiian songs. He did some albums of Hawaiian music. And to me, that's a big loss when you're talking about country music. In terms of present day, you can go back and you can see that and hear that diversity, but it's pretty much gone, and those little branches
just went to their own bluegrass and western swing, or
in terms of a real full like national distribution. I don't want to say they died, but they're not being distributed like the middle of the road country, and that's sad. I've heard other people say that, people like Willie Nelson and folks that talked about the early days of the Grand Ole Opry. You had all those different acts just mixed in there together. Blues, gospel, all that, and it's not really there anymore.
Even in those days, even gospel played a pretty big role. You said the barbershop quartet, but even other kinds of quartets sometimes would make it on the make it into the country charts or whatever. Gospel songs would.
And you can look at instruments, even all the different ways the instruments were played. With fiddle, you had the bluegrass of Kenny Baker, but then you had the more Louisiana style in there. Banjo, you had clawhammer style like Grandpa Jones, but then you had finger roll style like Earl Scruggs. So there was just tons of variety. Nobody thought there was like one way of doing things. And Monroe brought his Kentucky sound, but then people like this brought a Midwestern sound. And that's too bad that it's not like that anymore. You don't want to eat the same thing all the time. Why would you want to hear the same thing all the time? Kind of like the seasons, spring, winter, summer,
especially
fall.
If you're like us and you get to live in a place where the seasons are so, evident. You get 4 real seasons each year, which is amazing. It makes you appreciate each one of them. I know Paul don't like the cold like I do. I like
winter.
But I like the cold. I like the spring, and I like the hot of July and August. I love all of it, and of course the fall, the beautiful fall colors. So I really enjoyed all of it. Now that we've probably told you more about the song than you might have wanted to have known and everything we thought about it, we're going to leave you with a video of the song, Paul and Pap doing the video. It's one of my favorite videos. I really can't say that. I say that about every time I tell you about a song, because they're all my favorite videos. I'm so thankful that we have them. But I love this one especially because two of my nephews and Paul's nephews are playing with Paul and Pap that day. So you can see there's 3 generations of our family doing this wonderful old song. I love the harmony. It's always, as always, it's spot on. The music's great. I love that we let the camera play till the end. I mean, we didn't cut out the very end, and it's nothing special, but you can just, when the song ends, you can kind of see what a normal Sunday afternoon was like in those days when we would gather at Paul's and play music and just enjoy being together. So I really like that part of it. Paul kind of touched on that Daddy, Pap likely learned it from Uncle Henry, our great Uncle Henry. That's where he learned it. When we asked Granny about it before we were going to shoot the video today to see what she remembered about the song, she said, oh yeah, it would be really her uncle, our great uncle, but Henry Truitt, and then his sister Pearl. She said Uncle Henry and Aunt Pearl would sing that all the time out in the yard when they would gather on Sunday afternoons at Granny Gazzy's, at Granny's mother, Gazzy's house. And that would have been Pearl and Henry's sister. When we would gather, they would sing it out in the yard. And I said, well, did someone play music for them, or did they just sing, or what? And she said, oh, if your daddy, meaning Pap, if he was there, he would pick it for them. So they didn't always have music, but if he was there, he would play the guitar for them. And if you've been a Blind Pig follower kind of for a long time, you'll probably notice on the Blind Pig and the Acorn channel, and if you hadn't ever checked that out, you can find all kinds of our family's music there. But you'll notice every video kind of ends with this scene of people sitting on a porch and a little girl standing there looking at them. You can see there's 2 men with guitars. The one sitting in the chair is Pap. He was young. The one sitting down on the porch floor is Ricky Truitt, and he was part of that family. He's no longer with us, sadly. And then the little girl is me. But if you look in the background, you can see Aunt Pearl is sitting there. I think Uncle Bars is Ricky's father. I don't remember that Uncle Henry's in the video, in the photo. But that was a snapshot on that day. Likely, maybe they sung that song. Maybe they sung this song, Little Green Valley. So that was where Pap would have learned it, was in that situation, in that setting, there with all of Granny's family gathered up on a Sunday afternoon after they probably eat one of Granny Gazzy's delicious Sunday dinners. And then they went outside to sit on the porch to talk and also to play some music.
And that's that folk tradition of how to learn songs too.
Yeah.
Because Uncle Henry probably heard it on the radio back in the 30s, 40s, something like that. Yeah, and that's why so many of those old songs, you'll hear it this place and they say this word and these people over here say this, is because often that's how they didn't have their phone carrying around with them recording, so they just had to go on memory. So a lot of times the little words got switched out, or maybe even a whole line. They couldn't remember all of it, but they could remember part of it. Anyway, so sometimes that's how that happened. But we hope you enjoyed listening to us talk about the song. We certainly hope you enjoy the video, and be sure to be on the lookout for the next video where we're talking about the traditional music of Appalachia.
I see a candlelight down in a little green valley, where morning glory vines are twining round my door. Oh, how I wish that I were there tonight down in a little green valley, and there my homesick garden gate down in the little green valley. When I get back again, how happy she will be. And by a little babbling brook once more we'll wander, and in a shady nook we'll dream the hours away. And every night down upon my knees I'll pray the Lord to please take me back to that little old green valley far away.
Care to stop it? I'm so lazy.